It's this rainy day. Man, this detox gets full when it rains. I'm sick of being on the street, you know. My old lady and me went over to the bleachers. It's nice, real quiet and lots of room. Then it started to rain and she started to cry. I kept on asking her, "What's the matter, hon? What's the matter?" And you know what she finally said? "All the cigarette butts are getting wet." Shit, so I hit her. She went nuts. Cops took her to jail and brought me here. I can stand it drying out. Trouble is, when I sober up, I start to think. Alcoholics think more than most people, and that's the truth. I drink just to shut off the words. Shit, what if I was a drummer? Last time I was in here, there was a Psychology Today talking about Skid Row drunks. It proved Jockey's thought more. Said they scored higher on tests than normal people and higher on retention. There was just one thing they scored bad on. Couldn't do worth a damn, but I can't remember what it was. This is called Macadam. When fresh, it looks like caviar, sounds like broken glass, like someone chewing ice. I chew ice when the lemonade was finished, swaying with my grandmother on the porch swing. We gazed down upon the chain gang niggers paving Upson Street. A foreman poured the macadam. The convicts stomped it down with a heavy rhythmic beat. Their chains rang. The macadam made the sound of applause. The three of us said the word often. My mother, because she hated where we lived, in squalor, and at least now we would have a macadam street. My grandmother just wanted things clean. It would hold down the dust, red Texan dust that blew in with gray tailings from the smelter, sifting onto dunes on the polished hall floor onto her mahogany table. I used to say Macadam out loud to myself because it sounded like the name for a friend. This is called the Pony Bar, Oakland. There are certain perfect, particular sounds. A tennis ball, a golf ball hit just right, a fly ball in a leather glove, lingering thud of a knockout. I get dizzy at the sound of a perfect pool break, a crisp bank shot followed by 3 or 4 muffled slides and consecutive clicks, the caressing twist of chalk on the cue. Pool is erotic any way you look at it, usually in a dim, pulsating jukebox light. Cricket in Santiago, red parasols, green grass, white Andes, red and white striped canvas chairs at the Prince of Wales Country Club. I signed chits for lemonade, tipped the tuxedoed waiters, applauded John Wells. Perfect crack of the cricket bat. I wore white, was careful of grass stains, flirted with boys who wore grain school gray flannels, blue blazers in summertime. Cucumber sandwiches for tea, plans for Sunday at Viña del Mar. At the Pony Bar, I remembered feeling as alien on the green grass as I did on the bar stool next to the biker. He had hinges tattooed on his wrists, at the bend of his elbow, behind his knees. "You need a hinge on your neck," I said. "You need a screw up your ass." This is called My Jockey. It's for Duncan McNaughton. I like working in emergency. You meet men there anyway. Real men, heroes, firemen and jockeys. They're always coming into emergency rooms. Jockeys have wonderful x-rays. They break bones all the time, but just tape themselves up and ride the next race. Their skeletons look like trees, like reconstructed brontosaurus, St. Sebastian's x-rays. I get the jockeys because I speak Spanish and most are Mexican. The first jockey I met was Munoz. I undress people all the time, and it's no big deal. It takes a few seconds. Munoz lay there unconscious, a miniature Aztec god. Because his clothes were so complicated, it was as if I were performing an elaborate ritual. Unnerving because it took so long, like in Mishima, where it takes 3 pages to take off the lady's kimono. His magenta satin shirt had many buttons along the shoulder and at each tiny wrist. His pants were fastened with intricate lacings, pre-Columbian knots. His boots smelled of manure and sweat, but were as soft and dainty as Cinderella's. He slept on, an enchanted prince. He began to call for his mother even before he woke. He didn't just hold my hand like some patients do, but clung to my neck, sobbing, "Mamacita, mamacita." The only way he would let Dr. Johnson examine him was if I held him cradled like a baby. He was as tiny as a child, but strong, muscular. A man in my lap. A dream man? A dream baby? Dr. Johnson sponged my forehead while I translated. For sure, he had a broken collarbone, at least 3 broken ribs, probably a concussion. No, Munoz said. He had to ride in tomorrow's races. Get him to X-ray, Dr. Johnson said. Since Munoz wouldn't lie down on the gurney, I carried him down the corridor like King Kong. He was weeping. He was weeping, terrified. His tears soaked my breast. We waited in the dark room for the X-ray tech. I soothed him just as I would a horse. Cálmate, lindo, cálmate. Despacito, despacito. Slowly, slowly. He quieted in my arms, blew and snorted softly. I stroked his fine back. It shuddered and shimmered like that of a splendid young colt. It was marvelous. Okay, where am I? I should say here, when I thought about what I was going to read, I noticed that everything I wanted to read was about old men, all the stories. And of course, I thought then about Fade Out and about Wall to Wall and Hypocritic Days. And I've read those books since the late 50s of Douglas Wolfe's. And I don't know if his influence shows in my writing. I do know that his writing changed the way I saw things and the way I heard things. And I'm really proud to be here. The first old man I'm going to read about is my grandfather. And this is a book that Alistair of Poltroon Press just put out. It's really a lovely book. And anyway, hot Texas summer. My mother and I had gone to El Paso when Mamie got cancer. I missed the mountains, the one-room schoolhouse in Montana. Terrified by the nuns, I struck back at Sister Cecilia and was expelled from St. Joseph's. As punishment, I had to work every day of summer vacation in Grandpa's dental office. I knew the real reason was that they didn't want me to play with the neighborhood children, Mexicans and Syrians. No Negroes, but that was only a matter of time, my mother said. I'm sure they also wanted to spare me Mamie's dying, her moaning, her friends praying, the stench and the flies. At night, she would doze off with morphine, and my mother and Grandpa each drank in their separate rooms. I could hear the separate gurgles of bourbon from the porch where I slept. Grandpa barely spoke to me all summer. I sterilized and laid out his instruments, tied towels around the patients' necks, held the stomaceptine cup, and told them to spit. When there weren't any patients, he went into his workshop to make teeth or into his office to paste. I wasn't allowed to go into either room. He pasted Ernie Pyle and FDR, had different scrapbooks for the Japanese and German wars, for crime in Texas, and freak accidents. A man gets mad and throws a watermelon out of a second-story window. It hits his wife on the head and kills her, bounces off, hits the baby in the buggy and kills it too, and doesn't even break. Everybody hated Grandpa but Mamie, and me, I guess. He got drunk every night and mean. He was cruel and bigoted and proud. He had shot my Uncle John's eye out and had shamed and humiliated my mother all her life. She wouldn't speak to him, wouldn't even get near him because he was so filthy, slopping food and spitting, leaving wet cigarettes everywhere. Plaster from teeth molds covered him with white specks like a painter or a statue. He was the best dentist in West Texas, maybe in all of Texas. Many people said that, and I believed it. It wasn't true that his patients were all old winos or Mamie's friends, despite what my mother said. Distinguished men came from Dallas or Houston because he made such wonderful false teeth. His teeth never slipped or whistled, and they looked completely real. He had invented a secret formula to color them right, sometimes even made them chipped or yellowed with fillings and gold caps on them. He wouldn't let anyone in his workshop, just the fireman, that once. It hadn't been cleaned in 40 years. I went in when he went to the bathroom. The windows were caked black with dirt and plaster and wax. The only light came from 2 flickering Bunsen burners, blue. Huge sacks of plaster were stacked against the walls, sifted over onto a floor lumpy with chunks of broken molds, rolling jars of one teeth stuck wax. Shelves were crammed with rusted tools and rows of dentures grinning or upside down frowning like theater masks. Under the counter were barrels of pulled bloody teeth, 40 years of teeth, old shoes, empty Jack Daniel bottles, scrapbooks. The shelves were studded with burnt-out cigarettes shredded at one end. Old tin pan with a hole in the bottom, hole in the bottom, hole in the bottom. He chanted while he worked, his cigarettes catching fire with quick hisses to candy wrappers and gobs of wax. He threw coffee on the fire, staining the plaster soft floor a deep cave brown. There was no door between the room where he worked on patients and the waiting room. The patients were usually hidden by his back, but he would turn around to talk to people in the waiting room, waving his drill. The people waiting sat on windowsills or radiators. The only real place to sit was a chaise longue for extraction patients to recover on. Sometimes someone sat in the phone booth, a big wooden a big wooden booth with a payphone, a fan, and a sign. I never met a man I didn't like. There weren't any magazines. If someone brought one and left it there, he would throw it away. He just did this to be contrary, my mother said. He said it was because it drove him crazy, people sitting there turning the pages. His patients wandered around the room, fooling with things on the safes. Buddhas, skulls with false teeth wired to open and close, jack-in-the-boxes, snakes that bit you if you pulled their tails, domes you turned over and it snowed. On the ceiling was a sign, "What the hell are you looking up here for?" One of the safes contained gold and silver for fillings, stacks of money, and bottles of Jack Daniels. On all of the windows facing the main street of El Paso were large gold letters that read, "Dr. H.A. Moynihan, I don't work for Negroes." The sign turned back again, right side in the mirrors that hung on the remaining walls, and was also written on the door to the hall. I never sat facing the door because I was afraid Negroes would come and look in over the sign. I never saw a Negro in the Capels building, though, except for Jim, the elevator man. When people called for appointments, I told them Grandpa was no longer taking patients, though as summer went on, there was less and less to do. Finally, just before Mamie died, there were no patients at all. He just stayed locked in his workshop or office. I used to go up on the roof outside the bathroom. You could see Juarez and all of downtown El Paso. I would pick out one person in the crowd and follow him until he disappeared. Mostly, I just sat inside on the radiator, looking down at Yandell Avenue. I spent hours decoding letters from Captain Marvel pen pals, but that was boring too. The code was just A for Z, Y for B, etc. Nights were long and hot. Mamie's friends stayed even when she slept, reading from the Bible, singing sometimes. Grandpa went out to the Elks or to Juarez. The 8-5 cab driver helped him up the stairs. My mother went out to play bridge, she said, but she came home drunk too. The Haddad kids played outside until very late. I watched the girls from the porch. They played jacks squatting on the concrete under the streetlight. I ached to play with them. The sound of the jacks was magical to me, the toss of the jacks like brushes on a drum, or like rain when a gust of wind shimmers it against the window pane. One morning, when it was still dark, Grandpa woke me up. It was Sunday. I dressed while he called the cab. He didn't answer the cab driver either when he asked why we were going to the office on Sunday. It was dark and scary in the lobby. Cockroaches clattered across the tiles, and magazines grinned at us behind the bars of grating. He drove the elevator, maniacally crashing all the way up and then down and up again until finally we stopped above the 5th floor and jumped down. All you could hear were church bells in the Juarez trolley. At first I was too frightened to follow him into the workshop, but he pulled me in. It was dark, like going into a movie, until he lit the gasping Bunsen burners, blue. I still couldn't see what he wanted me to. He moved the set of false teeth closer to the flame on the marble block. I shook my head. "Keep looking at 'em." I finally smiled. "They're yours." They were stained and rotten and crooked. Even the gums were real and ugly, a sick pale pink, a little bloody looking around the teeth. The teeth were filled and cracked. Some were chipped or worn away. He had changed only one tooth in front that he had put a gold cap on. That's what made it a work of art, he said. "How did you get all those colors?" "Pretty dang good, eh? Well, is it my masterpiece?" "Yes, it is." I shook his hand. I was very happy to be there. "How did you fit them? Will they fit?" Usually he pulled out all the teeth and let the gums heal and made an impression of the bare gum. Some of the new guys are doing it this way. You make the impression before you pull the teeth, make the dentures, and put them in before the gums have a chance to shrink. Haven't you seen? That's how I've been doing it. No, I hadn't, had paid no attention. "When are you getting your teeth pulled?" "Right now, we're going to do it. Go get things ready." I plugged in the rusty sterilizer. The cord was frayed, sparked. He started toward it. Never mind that, but I said, no, they have to be sterile, and he laughed. He put his whiskey bottle and cigarettes on the tray, lit a cigarette, and poured a paper cup full of Jack Daniels. I fixed the reflector, tied a bib on him, and pumped the chair up and back. Boy, I'll bet a lot of your patients would like to be in my shoes. That thing boiling yet? No. I filled some paper cups with stomaceptine, got out a jar of smelling salts. What if you pass out? Good, then you can just pull them. Grab them as close as you can, twist and pull at the same time. Drink. I handed him a cup of stomaceptine. Wise guy. I poured him whiskey. None of your patients get a drink. They're my patients, not yours. Okay, it's boiling. I drained the sterilizer into the spitting bowl, laid out a sterile towel. With another one, I placed the instruments in an arc on the tray above his chest. He was humming Old Tim Pan. Hold the little mirror for me. I stood on the footrest between his knees to hold the mirror close. The first 3 teeth came out easy. He handed them to me, and I tossed them into the barrel by the wall. The incisors were harder, one in particular. He gagged and stopped, the root still stuck in his gum. Take it. I pulled at it. Scissors, you fool. I snipped through the bubbling blood, pulled it with the other hand. It came out with a red gush. It's beautifully done. It's got red. I sat down on the metal plate between his feet. Just a minute, Grandpa. God damn. He reached over above me for the bottle, drank, then took a different tool from the tray. He began to pull the rest of his bottom teeth without a mirror. The sound was the sound of roots, like trees coming out of winter hard ground. Blood dripped onto the tray, plop, plop, onto the metal where I sat. He was laughing so hard I thought he had gone mad. He fell over onto me. Frightened, I leaped up so hard I pushed him back into the tilted chair. Pull them, he gasped. I was afraid, wondered quickly if it would be murder if I pulled them, and he died. Pull them. He spat a thin red waterfall down his chin. I pumped the chair way back. He was limp, did not seem to feel me twist the back top teeth sideways and out. He fainted, his lips closing like gray clamshells. I opened his mouth and shoved a paper towel into one side so I could get the 3 back teeth that were left. The teeth were all out. I tried to pump the chair down with a foot pedal, but hit the wrong lever, spinning him around and around, spattering, spiraling circles of blood on the floor. Bullseye. I left him tilted back, the chair creaking slowly to a stop. I wanted some tea bags. He had people bite down on them to stop the bleeding. I dumped Mamie's drawers out, talcum, prayer cards, thank you for the flowers. The tea bags were in a canister behind the hot plate. The towel in his mouth was soaked crimson now. I dropped it on the floor, shoved a handful of tea bags into his mouth, and held his jaws closed. I screamed. Without any teeth, his face was like a skull, white bones above the vivid, bloody throat. Scary monster, a teapot come alive, yellow and black Lipton tags dangled like parade decorations. I ran to phone my mother, no nickel. I couldn't move him to get to his pockets. He had wet his pants, urine dripped onto the floor. He was breathing, a bubble of blood kept appearing and bursting in his nostril. The phone rang. It was my mother. She was crying. The pot roast, a nice Sunday dinner, even cucumbers and onions, just like Mamie. Help, Grandpa, I said, and I hung up. He had vomited. Oh, good, I said, and then giggled because it was such a silly thing to say oh, good about. I dropped the tea bags into the mess on the floor, wet some towels, and washed his face. I opened the smelling salts under his nose, smelled them myself, and shuddered. My teeth, they're gone, I called, like to a child. All gone. The new ones, fool. I went to get them. I knew them now. They were exactly like his mouth had been inside. He reached up for them like a Juarez beggar, but his hands shook too badly. I'll put them in. Rinse first. I handed him the mouthwash. He rinsed and spat without lifting his head. I poured peroxide over the teeth and put them in his mouth. Hey, look, I held up Mamie's ivory mirror. Well, dadgum, he was laughing. A masterpiece, Grandpa. I laughed too and kissed his sweaty head. Oh, my God, my mother shrieked, came toward me with her arms outstretched. She slipped in the blood, slid across the room into the teeth barrels, held on to them as if she were loading them. Look at his teeth, Mama. She didn't even notice, couldn't tell the difference. He poured her some Jack Daniels. She took it, toasted him absent-mindedly, and drank. You're crazy, Daddy. He's crazy. Where did all the tea bags come from? His shirt made a tearing sound coming unstuck from his skin. I helped him wash his chest and wrinkled belly. I washed myself, too, and put on a coral sweater of Mamie's. The two of them drank silent while we waited for the 8:5 cab. I drove the elevator down, landed it pretty close to the bottom. When we got home, the driver helped Grandpa up the stairs. He stopped at Mamie's door, but she was asleep. In bed, Grandpa slept, too, his teeth bared in a Bela Lugosi grin. They must have hurt. He did a good job, my mother said. You don't still hate him, do you, Mama? I asked. Oh, yes. Yes, I do. That's that one. The last one is Phantom Pain, which is the title story of the book Michael is putting out, Timbuktu Press, in a few months, very soon. Phantom Pain. I was 5 then at the Deuce's Wild Mine in Montana. Every few months before it snowed, my father and I would climb into the mountains, following blazes old Hancock had made back in the 1890s. My father carried a duffel bag filled with coffee, cornmeal, jerky, things like that. I carried a stack of Saturday Evening Posts, most of the way anyway. Hancock's cabin was at the edge of a crater-shaped meadow on the very top of the mountain, blue sky over it, all around it. His dog was named Blue. Grass grew on the roof, down in a rakish fringe over the porch where they drank coffee and talked, passing chunks of ore, squinting through cigarette smoke. I played with Blue and the goats, or pasted pages of the Post on the cabin walls already thickly layered with past issues, evenly in neat rectangles, one on top of another, all around the small room. Snowed in during the long winter, Hancock would read his walls, page by page. If he found the end of a story, he'd try to make up what came before, or piece it together with other pages around the cabin. When he had read the whole room, he'd pace for days and days, and then start all over. I hadn't gone up with my father the first trip that spring, when he had found the old man dead. The goats and the dog, too, all in his bed. When I get cold, I just pulls me up another goat, he used to say. Come on, Lou, just take me up there and leave me. That's what my father kept begging me to do when I first put him in the nursing home. That's all he talked about then, different mines, different mountains. Idaho, Arizona, Colorado, Bolivia, Chile. His mind was starting to go then. He wouldn't just remember those places, but would actually think he was there in that time. He would think I was a child, or talk to me as if I was the age I had been in different places. He'd tell the nurses things like, little Lou can read all of our friendly helpers, and she's only 4 years old. I'd bring him café con leche every morning. I'd shave him and comb him, walk him up and down the rank-smelling halls. Most of the other patients were still in bed, calling, rattling their bars, ringing their bells. Senile old ladies play with themselves. After walking with him, I'd tie him down in his wheelchair so he wouldn't try to run away and fall down. And I'd do it too. I wouldn't pretend or just humor him. I'd actually go with him someplace, to the trench mine in the mountains of Patagonia, Arizona. I was 8 years old, purple with gentian violet for ringworm. In the evening, we would all go out to the cliff to dump cans and burn the garbage. Deer and antelope, the puma sometimes, would come close, not afraid of us or our dogs. Nighthawks darted against the sheer rock face of the cliffs beyond us, deeper red in the sunset. The only time my father said he loved me was just before I came back to the States for college. We were on the beach in Tierra del Fuego, Antarctic cold. We've tramped through this whole continent together, he said. The same mountains, the same ocean, from top to bottom. I was born in Alaska, but I don't remember it. He kept thinking I should in the nursing home, so finally I did pretend to know Gabe Carter, to remember Noam, the bear in the camp. In the beginning, he kept asking about my mother. Where was she? When was she coming? Or he would think she was there, would talk to her, make me feed her a bite for every bite he took. I stalled him. She was packing. She was coming. When he was better, we would all live together in a big house in Berkeley. He would nod, reassured, except for one day when he said, "You're lying through your teeth." And then he went on talking about something else. One day, he just killed her off. When I arrived, he was lying in bed, weeping, curled up like a baby. He told the story as if in shock with irrelevant details, like someone who has witnessed a horrible accident. They were on a Mississippi steamboat. My mother was gambling below decks. Colored people were allowed on now in Florida, his nurse, had won every cent of their money. My mother had bet the whole thing, their life savings, in one last hand of 5-card draw. One-eyed Jack's wild. I should have known, he said, when I saw that hussy laughing away with her gold teeth, counting all that money. She gave John here at least $4,000. Dry up, you snob, John said from the bed next to my father's. He took a Hershey bar from the back of his Bible. He wasn't allowed sweets. It was the one I'd brought my father the day before. My father's reading glasses showed from under John's pillow. I got them. John began to moan, cry, my legs hurt. He didn't have any legs. He was a diabetic, and they had been amputated above the knees. On the steamboat, my father had been in the bar with Bruce Sassy, a diamond driller from Bisbee. They had heard the shot, and then a long time later, the splash. I didn't have change for a tip, but I didn't want to leave $1. Cheap snob, typical, John said from his bed. My father and Bruce Sassy rushed round to starboard side just as my mother was floating away, blood in the wake of the boat. He grieved for her only that one day, but for weeks he talked about her funeral. Thousands of people had been there. None of my sons had worn a suit, but I looked lovely and was gracious. Ed Titman came, the ambassador to Peru, Domingo the butler, even Charlie Bloom, the old Swede from Mullen, Idaho. Charlie once told me he always put sugar on his oatmeal. What if you don't have any, I asked, smart aleck. I puts it on just the same. The day my father killed off my mother was the day he stopped knowing me. After that, he ordered me around like a secretary or a servant. One day, I finally asked him where I was. I had run off. Bad blood, a Moynihan, just like my mother and Uncle John. I had just taken off one afternoon right outside the nursing home, up Ashby Avenue with a good-for-nothing greaser in a 4-hole Buick. The man he described was, in fact, a dark, sleazy type I find attractive. Yeah. He began hallucinating most of the time then. Wastebaskets turned into dogs that talked. Leaf shadows on the walls became marching soldiers. The hefty nurses were now transvestite spies. He talked incessantly about Eddie and little Joe. Neither seemed to be anyone he might have known. Every night they had some wild, free-wheeling adventure on an ammunition ship outside Nagasaki, in helicopters above Bolivia. My father would laugh, loose and easy, as I had never known him to be. It got so I would pray for him to be this way, but more and more he was becoming rational, oriented as to time and place. He talked about money he had made, money he had lost, money he would make. He saw me then as a broker, maybe, would drone on and on about options and percentages, scrawling figures all over the Kleenex box, margins and T-notes and stocks and bonds. He would bitterly denounce his daughter, me, for having murdered his wife and locking him up, for murdering his wife and locking him up just to get his money. Florida was the only black nurse in the hospital who would work with him. He accused them all of stealing, called them pickaninnies or whores. He'd used the urinal to call the police. Florida and John had stolen all his money. John would ignore him, reading his Bible or just lying in his bed, writhing, screaming. My legs, Lord Jesus, stop the pain in my legs. Hush, John, Florida said. That's only phantom pain. Is it real, I asked her. She shrugged. All pain is real. He talked to Florida about me. She laughed, winking at me, agreeing. She's rotten to the core. He told us all the ways I'd been a disappointment to him, from the spelling bee to my failed marriages. It's getting to you, Florida said. You've stopped ironing his shirts. Pretty soon you won't come no more. But there was a new bond I felt. I had never seen him bitter or bigoted or money conscious. This was the man whose idols had been Thoreau and Jefferson and Thomas Paine. I wasn't disillusioned. The fear and awe I had felt toward him were beginning to disappear. The other thing I liked was that I could touch him now, hug him and bathe him, cut his toenails and hold his hand. I didn't really listen to anything he said anymore. I'd hold him, listening to Florida and the other nurses singing and laughing, days of our lives blaring from the day room. I'd feed him Jell-O and listen to John read from Deuteronomy. I've never understood how so many barely literate people read the Bible so much. It's hard. In the same way, it surprises me that uneducated seamstresses all over the world can figure out how to put in sleeves and zippers. He ate in his rooms and wouldn't associate with the other patients at all. I would, just for a break or to keep from crying. On the bulletin board was a big sign that said, today is, the weather is, the next meal is, the next holiday is. For 2 months it was a rainy Tuesday before lunch and Easter, but after that the spaces were always blank. A volunteer named Ada read the paper every morning, turning and turning pages, avoiding crime and violence. Most days all she ended up with were bus crashes in Pakistan, Dennis the Menace and the horoscope, hurricanes in Galveston. I also can't understand how people have stayed in Galveston after all these years. I came to enjoy the other patients. Most of them were even more senile than my father, but they were all glad to see me, clawed at me with tiny fingers. They all recognized me, called me different names. I kept going to visit him, maybe out of guilt, as Florida said, but with hope, too. I kept waiting for him to praise me and forgive me. Please know me, Daddy. Say you love me. He never did, and I only go now to take shaving things or pajamas or candy. He can't walk anymore. He gets violent, so they have him in a posy day and night. The last real time I was with him was on the picnic to Lake Merritt. 10 patients went, Ada, Florida, Sam, and I. Sam is a janitor. Chimp, my father called him. It took an hour to load them into the van, wheelchairs up a winding lift. It was very hot the day after Memorial Day. Most of them had peed even before we got moving. Windows steamed up. The old people laughed and were excited, but frightened too, flinching when buses passed us, sirens, motorcycles. My father looked nice in a seersucker suit, but then the front turned blue as Parkinson's drool, and dark blue all down one leg. I had imagined that we would be under the trees by the water, but Ada had us set the wheelchairs in a semicircle facing the street by the duck pond. I also imagined the winos would leave, but they just stayed on the benches in front of the old people. Some of the patients smelled cigarettes and asked for them. One of the winos gave John one, but Ada took it away and stomped it out. Exhaust fumes and radios from the pimpmobiles and lowriders and motorcycles. The ground vibrated with joggers who bunched up when they got to us, running in places they tried to get around. We were passing food, feeding the feeders, potato salad and fried chicken, pickled beets and Kool-Aid. Florida and I served plates to the 4 winos on the bench, and Ada got furious. There was way too much food, though. Neapolitan ice cream melted onto bibs. Lula and May just bashed the bars, played with them in their laps. My father was very neat when he ate. Had always been meticulous. I washed each of his fingers. He had beautiful hands. I don't know why they pluck at their clothes and blankets. It's called flocculation. After lunch, a big woman in a park ranger uniform brought out a baby raccoon and passed it around. It was soft and smelled sweet, and everybody liked it, loved it, really. Holding him and stroking him, but Lula squeezed him so hard he clawed at her face. Rabid, my father said. My legs, John cried, my legs. The man gave John another cigarette. Ada didn't notice, was putting the food trays into the van. The ranger gave the raccoon to the winos. The little animal obviously knew them, curled around their necks, calm. Ada said we had 20 minutes to give people rides around the duck pond and the bird cages, up the hill for a view of the lake. My father had always loved birds. I parked him in front of the ratty-horned owls, talking to him about different birds we had seen. The porcupine with green hair, the pileated woodpecker against the white aspen, a frigate bird off Antofagasta, roadrunners mating, majestic. My father just sat there, his eyes glazed. The owls slept or were stuffed. I wheeled the chair away. All the others were festive, hollered and waved to us. John was really having a good time. Florida had made friends with a jogger who loaned her his tape recorder. Lula held it and sang while they fed the ducks. It was hard to push the chair up the hill, hot and loud with the cars and radios, and interminable thud-thud of the runners. It was so smoggy we could barely see the other shore. Memorial Day litter and debris. Paper cups floated in the foamy brown lake, serene as swans. At the top of the hill, I put on his brakes and lit a cigarette. He was laughing, an ugly laugh. It's awful, isn't it, Daddy? It sure is, Lou. He unloosened his brakes, and the chair started down the brick path. I hesitated, just stood there watching it. But then I threw away my cigarette and caught his chair just as it was picking up speed. Thank you.